Hello there my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this really cool zigzag wirework ring and bangle. So both pieces use the same basic technique, there's just slight differences in the size of course, and I will go through that as well. Now if you want to support me in any way so I can continue making these free tutorials for you, I do have a shop where I sell my jewelry kits and tutorials. There's a super thanks button down below, and of course you can like, share and subscribe. So if you want to learn how to make these pieces, then keep watching. So these are the materials and tools we'll need. First of all, we need our wire, and I'm using a copper wire. The first gauge is a 1mm, this is the base wire, and then I'm using a 0.3mm for the weaving wire. And then the most important tool that we're going to need is the wire crinkler tool. So this is going to make sure we get perfectly zigzagged wire. Then for the rest of our tools, I'm using these flush cutters to cut the wire, tweezing nose pliers to help manipulate the wire, and finally a ring mandrel to help get the right size and shape that we need. Now do make sure to check out the description box below the video. You'll find the material list and links that might be useful. Otherwise, let's get our tools and materials ready and let's get started. Then the length of wires that we'll need is first of all a length of our base wire here, and this is about 30 centimeters long. And there isn't really a set length you need to cut your weaving wire. I just tend to work with about 40 to 50 centimeters or so, because you can always cut more. So the first thing we need to do is bring out our wire crinkler tool and our base wire. And we need to feed this base wire length through the wire crinkler tool to achieve that zigzag effect. So you just want to put it through the little hole and then have it catch in between the two gears here, and one has a little handle. And then you just want to keep pushing it through. And then you'll be able to see on the other side it's going to come out perfectly zigzagged, and just keep going until we've done the whole length. And then we have our full length here, and I might find it's a little bit curvy. Don't worry about that, just straighten it out gently. Then we need to get a ring mandrel and start shaping this zigzagged wire around it. So we just want to place it on here and then start getting the shape in place. And now what you'll need to do is make sure that the zigzags here obviously line up when they come back around. And because of that, you can only really get a couple certain sizes, but there is a way to get sizes in between that. So just, as you can see here, make sure to line them up so they kind of slot into each other, and just keep bringing this around. Now obviously you can really do however many rounds you want to. This currently is 2, so it would be a little bit narrower. I personally like to do 3, but of course you can also even do more, then you might need a longer length of wire. But just make sure to come all the way around and complete that final round. So we then have, in this case here, 3 rounds slotted together nicely like this. Now I just want to show you how you can adjust the size even more specifically with this little length I've got left. So you would do this before you shape it around the ring mandrel. Basically what you would do is either tighten up these zigzags a little bit or open them up more. So I'm just using my tweezing nose pliers, and if I'm going to tighten them up, I'm just going to grab right where the point is and just bring it ever so slightly closer towards the other side. And if you can see there, it's kind of made it a little bit out of shape, but then I grab the next one and bring that just ever so slightly closer, and that brings it back down. And you basically just want to keep going like that all the way along, just tightening them up ever so slightly, or like I said, opening them up ever so slightly, and that can then give you a different size in between the sizes you can get by just lining them up how they originally are. So that is something you'd have to just play around with to get the exact size that you want. Otherwise, this is then when I'm going to bring in my length of weaving wire, because as you can see, this is open and kind of springy, wants to come apart. So I need to fasten that so it's going to be more solid all the way around. So I'm going to take one end there, just put it underneath. And then what I'm going to do is on all the points, I'm going to create a little weaved section, which will help hold it in place. So just starting with the first one, leave that short little tail. And I'm going to be using the diagonal wire weave for this. So I want to wrap around the bottom one by itself, first of all. And in this case, I've got the opening right there, so I can just bring it around. And then just tighten up that very first wrap. And I want to try and hold it down here at the very bottom wire on this pointed section. So I'm going to be doing this one first. Then I want to go over the top of the bottom 2 base wires and just push my weaving wire down through. You can go all the way to the end of the weaving wire and feed it through like that, but you can also kind of push it through in a loop like this and then pull the rest through and then have it come out on the bottom here down behind. And I'm trying to all the time keep my wraps right in that position. Then we need to come up between the 2 wires, but again in this case, because I have this opening, I might as well just take advantage of that So I'm just going to bring the wire through. Otherwise, like I said, you can do the same way. Bring the end through where you need to bring it through, or push it through with a little bit of a loop. Now, I then need to go over the top of the top 2 base wires. Bring that all the way through, and just make sure that you then also pull it fairly nice and tight so it closes up any gaps between the 3 wires. And now in this case here, I then need to come up between those 2 wires that I just wrapped over the top of, and then bring the wire down to be able to wrap around the top one by itself, and then just push it down through the whole ring band. And then that's 1 round of the weave. Now I personally like to do 1 more, so I'm literally going to repeat the same thing. So I'm just going to wrap around the bottom one by itself and just have it sit right next to that first round we just did. Then down through the top 2, so we come over the top of the bottom 2 and push them nice and tight so they sit just exactly how we want them to. And again, so we come up between the 2 we just wrapped over the top of, then go over the top of the top 2 there, and then immediately come up between them so we can wrap around the top one by itself. Pull it down through, make sure everything sits nice and tight and exactly where we want it on this pointed area. And that's now the second round. So I have 2 rounds of my weave right next to each other here, holding this little section in place. Now what I then like to do is go in with my cutters, cut off the excess and just leave a short tail there and just put it out the way. And I like to do the whole ring first and then go and get rid of the ends. You can also do it along the way, that's up to you. This is just how I like to do it. Then what we need to do is move to the next point. So just grab the same weaving wire, put it behind, and then this point in the base wires is the one that goes in the opposite direction, just right next to it. But otherwise, it's the exact same. Use a diagonal wire weave to fasten this pointed section in place, wrap in the same way that I just showed you, to basically connect this one in place. And then I have 2 rounds on this little section as well. Then go and cut off the excess, just leave a short little tail, come back to it later, and then just keep using this wire, working your way all the way around. And if you want to do each of the points, you don't have to. You can just do some of them and maybe even just do a couple of the back and then leave the front free. So you just see the wires in the front. That's an option as well. You just need to make sure you do capture at least a few here at the back where the wire ends of the base wires are, just to make sure it's nice and secure. So I now made my way all the way around here until I have this little gap left, but this is also where my base wire ends are. So I just want to deal with them. So the way I'm going to finish them off is, if you can just have a look at that little end right here, that's where one end is. And the other end obviously is the one coming out. So what I'm going to do is that very little end, I want to cut off the excess. So when it's cut, it basically just looks like it blends in with the other wires. So I cut it right where that inner point is. And I'm just going to do the same with the other side. Now I like to do it so basically when it's cut, these wires here actually add up to 4. So they basically overlap a little bit. So place your pliers right on that inner point, cut straight so the wire basically just continues, and again it finishes in that inner point there. And then I can just go back to my weaving wire and just connect these last 2 parts as well. Now what you can do if you need to is file down the ends of the base wire a little bit just to make sure they're smoother, but otherwise what we need to do now is literally get rid of all these ends of the weaving wire. As you can see, it's a little bit messy, so just start somewhere, doesn't matter where you start, and I'm just going to focus on one at a time. I'm going to pick out the wires from that section and then go to the inside where they are finishing up, wrapping around, and then just cut them down. So the top one here, cut down the excess, but I'm making sure I leave just a short little tail so that I can use my tweezer nose pliers and push that down and also roll in the direction that the wrap is going, because that then kind of tucks it in between the base wires there. And of course just the same with the one on the other side, cut it down so we just have a short little length left of about 1 millimeter or so, and then put my tweezer nose pliers on the end, push it down, and then just roll it so it gets tucked in between the base wires. That way it's not going to catch or scratch on the skin. And of course you just want to go all the way around and do that with all of them. So then your ring is finished and ready to wear. So they're great to wear on their own, but they're also perfect for stackable rings. So if you have two rings of different colours but wear them at the same time, they slot perfectly together because of the zigzag shape and give a really cool effect. Now you can also use the exact same technique to make a bracelet. The only difference of course would be the size of the piece and therefore the length of the materials that you're working with. Now what you would do is, because this is a bangle with no clasp on it, you need to make sure that it can go over your whole hand. So therefore you want to kind of scrunch up your hand as you would do when you're putting on a bangle, and then measure the widest part, and then you'll know what size you need to make your bangle. Of course, if you're not making it for yourself, the average female size bangle tends to be 7 to 7.5 inch. But then what we need to do is cut the length of base wire that we need, of course. Now I've found that it should work pretty well multiplying the length you got from measuring the widest part of your hand by the amount of rounds you want for your bangle plus 1 and a bit extra. So as an example, because I want 4 rounds on my bangle, I'm going to multiply my measurement by 5 because I'm adding in that extra round. And once I then get that result, I always like to add a little bit extra, like an extra 10 or 20 centimeters maybe, just because I'd rather be safe than sorry. But that should then be the measurement you need to cut your base wire in. So again, say if you want 5 rounds on your final bangle, you need to add that extra round, so you want to multiply your measurement by 6. And then once you get that result, just add a little bit extra. And again, for the weaving wire, you can literally just work with whatever length you're comfortable working with, as we keep having to cut it off and add new anyway, just like we did with the ring design. And then from here, of course, we need to zigzag the base wire first of all, so put the whole length through your tool. And then after that, you want to shape it into the bangle size. You can of course use something that has a size and shape you want it to have, like a bracelet mandrel, or anything else you have handy. Or you could also use your hands and fingers, and just make sure, of course, that the zigzags line up again, and you get the correct size that you want. And then again, we're going to have the ends just ever so slightly overlapping, and I recommend making that the starting point where you're going to connect all the rows together with your weaving wire. Just so that way it's all held together, you don't have to worry about anything springing open and you losing the shape. And then otherwise, you just continue working your way all the way around. And for the bracelet, I do recommend that you weave all the way around all the points there to make it as nice and secure as possible. And then you just finish off all your wires in the same way, and you'll have your finished bangle ready to wear. So as you can see, with this basic technique, you do have several options for different pieces that you could then make nice sets of jewelry with. And it's also a very unisex design. So if you want to check out more jewelry making tutorials, I have loads on my channel within many different mediums. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one here. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.